In July 1918, in the basement of a house in Yekaterinburg, the last Tsar of Russia was executed, along with his entire family. That house was called the Ipatiev House. 305 years earlier, the first Romanov Tsar had accepted his crown at a monastery of the exact same name. That's the fact everyone knows. What almost nobody knows is that there are 3 separate, documented moments across 3 centuries where someone warned the Romanovs exactly how their story would end. And every time, the family kept the crown anyway. A witch's curse, a monk's sealed prophecy, a dying man's letter. Let's start at the beginning, with a woman who lost everything the Romanovs took from her. Let's go back in time and see what happened. Moscow, the early 1600s. Russia has just crawled out of 15 years of civil war, full SARS, and famine. A period so brutal, history simply calls it the time of troubles, and the family that finally ends, it doesn't come to power cleanly. To understand this curse, you have to understand what the Romanovs actually did to get their throne, because their rise came at a cost, and one of its casualties was a 3-year-old boy. Marina Mniszech was a Polish noblewoman who married not 1, but 2 men, who each claimed to be the resurrected son of Ivan the Terrible. Men historians now call false Dmitry I and II. Neither claim was true. Both men were killed. But Marina had a son by the second one, a boy named Ivan, barely 3 years old, whose only crime was existing as a rival claim to the throne. In 1614, on the order of the newly crowned 16-year-old Tsar Mikhail Romanov and his father, Patriarch Filaret, the child was publicly hanged near Moscow's Serpukhov Gate. His small body was left there for months as a warning to anyone who might challenge the new dynasty. According to Russian folklore, Marina did not go quietly. Legend holds that she cursed the family that killed her son with these words, passed down through generations of Russian storytelling. In the Ipatievs you started, in the Ipatievs you will end. You began with the death of a Tsarevich. You will end with the death of a Tsarevich. Here's what makes this more than just a spooky campfire story. It's historically true that the dynasty began at the Ipatiev Monastery in Kostroma and ended 3 centuries later in a building that coincidentally carried the same name, where the final victim was another child heir, 13-year-old Tsarevich Alexei. I need to be honest with you about something historians always point out. This curse was never written down at the time. It survives only as folklore, first recorded generations after the fact. We can't prove Marina said those exact words, but the symmetry she's credited with predicting Tsarevich to Tsarevich, Ipatiev to Ipatiev, is documented, verifiable history. Someone at some point noticed that pattern and built a legend around it that fits disturbingly well. Nearly 200 years later, a second warning arrives, and this one, unlike Marina's curse, was written down, sealed, and locked away by the Romanovs themselves. His name, in the world, was Vasily Vasiliev. History remembers him as Monk Abel, a peasant-born hermit who claimed visions gave him knowledge of Russia's future, decades before it happened. Abel first came to the empire's attention when he predicted the exact death of Catherine the Great. For that, she imprisoned him. When she died on schedule, her son and successor, Paul I, released him, fascinated rather than frightened. Paul asked Abel directly what his own fate would be. According to the legend surrounding this meeting, Abel told the Tsar he would die a violent death, strangled in his own bedroom by men he trusted. Paul ordered the prophecy written down, sealed, and placed inside a box at Gatchina Palace, with instructions that it not be opened for 100 years. In March of 1801, Paul I was strangled in his bedroom during a palace coup. Abel spent most of the rest of his life in and out of monastery prisons for his predictions, imprisoned by Alexander I for forecasting Napoleon's invasion, then again for predicting the eventual fall of the entire Romanov house. He died in captivity. But that sealed box remained at Gatchina, untouched, exactly as instructed, for a full century. In 1901, Nicholas II, the century mark having arrived, opened it. Witnesses at court later said he and Empress Alexandra returned from Gatchina visibly shaken. Nicholas began privately referring to 1918 as a year he feared. He was executed in July of 1918. I want to flag the same caution here that I gave you with Marina's curse. The exact contents of that letter have never been independently verified. No copy survives that historians agree is authentic. What we do have is contemporary testimony that the box existed, that it was opened on schedule, and that the Tsar's mood changed afterward in a way multiple people at court separately described. Whether that's prophecy or self-fulfilling dread shaped by a myth he'd grown up hearing, that's for you to decide. The final warning didn't come from folklore, and it didn't come from a monk who'd been dead for 80 years. It came from a man the imperial family trusted more than almost anyone alive, written in his own hand, weeks before his death. By 1916, Grigory Rasputin held a position at court that scandalized the Russian nobility. A Siberian peasant mystic who Empress Alexandra credited with easing her hemophiliac son's suffering, and who had by extension gained real influence over decisions of state. The Russian nobility hated him for it, and Rasputin, according to multiple accounts recorded by people close to the family, seemed to know exactly what was coming. In a letter dated just weeks before his death, he laid out two very different futures. If he were killed by ordinary people, peasants, he wrote, the Tsar had nothing to fear, and his children would reign in Russia for generations. But if he were murdered by nobles, by the Tsar's own relatives, his words were exact. None of the Tsar's children or relations would remain alive for more than 2 years. They would be killed by the Russian people themselves. On the night of December 30th, 1916, a group of aristocrats led by Prince Felix Yusupov, married to the Tsar's own niece, lured Rasputin to a private palace and killed him. Accounts of that night vary wildly in the retelling, but the outcome doesn't. He died at the hands of nobility, exactly the scenario his letter warned about. 18 months after that letter was written, Nicholas, Alexandra, and all 5 of their children were dead. I have to give you the same disclaimer a third time because it matters. The authenticity of Rasputin's letter is disputed by historians. It survives mainly through second-hand accounts published years after the fact, some from people with their own reasons to embellish the story. But the timeline itself, the murder, the 18 months, the ending is not in dispute at all. A curse recorded only in folklore. A prophecy sealed for 100 years. A letter whose authenticity no one can confirm. Individually, each one is the kind of story historians roll their eyes at. But look at what sits underneath all three. A family that began its reign with the execution of one child heir, and ended it 305 years later with the execution of another in a building that, by pure chance of history, carried the same name as the place where it all started. Here's what I keep coming back to. Whether or not you believe in curses, the Romanovs did. Nicholas II opened that sealed box in 1901 and was never quite the same afterward. Belief in an ending can shape how you walk toward it. Maybe that's the real curse, not a witch's words or a monk's letter, but a dynasty that had 3 separate chances to hear how its story ended and kept going anyway. Tell me in the comments which of these 3 convinced you the most. And if you want the full deep dive on the Romanovs' final days in the Ipatiev house itself, you already know what to type. Until next time.